Today I'm going to talk about some of the benefits of remaining unmarried, remaining single, and preferably not in a relationship until about 35 and even beyond 35. Um, in the prior sessions, I have provided a different perspective on what society has come to expect from young men. And I've explained that the world we knew back in the turn of the century is not the same world that we live in today. There have been several changes. And although there have been several changes, when it comes to dating, when it comes to relationships, when it comes to the tradition of marriage, we are still doing things like we did several years ago. The consequences being that marriage is not what it used to be. Relationships are no longer what they used to be. In today's session, I'm going to try and provide some of the preliminary benefits of remaining unmarried, but ideally remaining unmarried until at least age 35. Now let me start with number one. The first is by remaining unmarried, it gives you, the man, the opportunity for maturity and the opportunity to develop your manhood. Many people think that wisdom comes with age. From my experience, it doesn't. I have met some very young people who are very wise, and similarly, I have met a number of very old people who are incredibly unwise. Wisdom is not a function of time. Wisdom is a function of the willingness to learn, the pursuit of the passion to learn, the pursuit of knowledge through experience, but also through other people's experiences. And one of the benefits of delaying marriage and not committing yourself into a long-term, exclusive, mono relationship is that it gives you the time to mature. For some strange reason, men have a reluctance to mature very early. We mature late, and that comes with its trade-offs. By pushing away the responsibility of looking out for someone else or looking out for the best interest of the union, it gives the man the time to come into his maturity, come into his manhood. It gives you time to get to know yourself. It gives you time to develop a circle of friends, associates, relationships that enable you remain accountable either to the group or to yourself. Maturity and manhood go together. It's not something that can be injected into you at 18. It's not something that you develop at sometimes even 30. But the more you delay and you remain unmarried, the higher the likelihood that you will come into your maturity at the right time. Again, this is not a group thing that happens. Many a times, most men are forced and ridiculed and bullied into maturity before their time. And many reasons for that has to do with maybe the need to live up to someone else's expectations. That we let go of who we and the path we would like to explore because we're hoping to be seen in the eyes of our environment, our society, our community, our family, we want to be perceived as mature, although we haven't actually had any lived experience. Now, I've used this example with a friend or group of friends, and I said to them once, and this, I was speaking to a few friends, and it was about a 10-year gap between myself and them. And I said, let's just imagine that all experiences are equal. And let's just imagine that every day, each and every one of us would have about 100 experiences every day. That would mean at the end of the year, each person would have had 365 times 100 experiences every single year. Now, if you multiply 365 by 100, you get 36,500. So it's 36,500 experiences every year. And I said, if all experiences are of equal validity in terms of weighting, and I am 10 years older than each and every one of you, then that means that I have 10 times the experience each and every one of you has. And by that, I have 36,500 experiences multiplied by 10 years, which is 365,000 experiences, more than each and every one of you. And that counts for something. That means I've had the opportunity to either learn from other people's experiences, or I've had the opportunity to learn from my own experiences. Now, without saying whether the experience was worthy of being considered as wise or unwise, if we just look at the numbers, 365,000 more experiences than someone else means that I have potentially, assuming I've learned from each experience, the probability of failure, in my opinion, based on my lived experience, is much less, because I've had the opportunity to try and fail and learn not to do it and make mistakes again. So keep that in mind. The first benefit to a man for remaining single is that it gives you the opportunity to mature and come into your manhood. Now, the second reason for remaining unmarried, at least until age 35, is that it gives you the opportunity to develop your career and your calling. Now, let me define a few things, and so you can understand the purpose behind the career calling benefits. Most people have jobs. A job is what you're paid to do, and that usually applies to any form of activity, including and especially those that do not require a specific professional training. So someone sweeping the streets has a job. They do not have a career. A career comes in when you've spent time educating yourself and acquiring the knowledge from first principles and having a trajectory in your career so that you're not staying at the same place. You're hoping to become a graduate accountant, then move up to an accountant and a senior accountant, and hopefully become a partner, and hopefully become, who knows, your own business owner. That is a trajectory, it's a path. That comes usually with skilled professional development and focused personal development. And over time, you become your best self. You're then able to create more value for people, create more value in such a way that the demand for your skill set increases, and people are willing to trade their money for your time and your experience. Delaying marriage means that most men have the opportunity to take the time to explore what career path is necessary for them. Well, first of all, it gives you the opportunity to go to college. Many a times, most people sacrifice their futures and sacrifice their potential opportunities because they meet someone, they fall in love, they no longer think rationally. Most decisions are then made emotionally. They believe that the relationship is all that matters and that the relationship will last forever, which it seldom does. And so they give up opportunities. Sometimes they give up scholarships. Sometimes they give up applications. They give up possibilities. Rather than go to Oxford University, they decide, well, the relationship is blossoming and I'm happy to stay here in Nottingham. Nottingham University is just as good. So people sacrifice and make several errors of both commission and omission as a result of being influenced by the emotional baggage and the emotional liability that comes in with the relationship. Now, don't get me wrong, relationships have their place and their value. But at a young age, most men make the mistake of not really appreciating the importance of a career. They make the mistake of not understanding the importance of having a calling. Your calling is what you were born to do. Your career is what you study to become. Your calling is your gift. Your gift is something that is handed to you. It's not something you work for, it's something you can enhance. Your career is something you develop through hard work and skill, and through commitment, and through dedication and resilience. Most people will never discover their calling because they haven't discovered and developed the discipline, the self-discipline required for such an endeavor. And that self-discipline often comes as part of a pursuit of a career. In other words, before you get to your calling, you need to be in a place of preparation. So wherever you are today, if it's not your calling, then it's your place of preparation for your calling. Seldom do we or are we called to greatness. Sometimes greatness is thrust on people, and some other times we are called to greatness through a feeling, through an event, a moment. But in any case, the skills, the wisdom, the discernment, the judgment needed to be able to excel at your calling, it's not something that is divinely given to you. It's something that you labor for by being good at something else. Sometimes that is your career. So one of the second benefits of delaying marriage is that it gives the man the opportunity to focus on his career and then pursue his calling. Now, both require failure. Winston Churchill once said that failure is, or rather success is going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. And that simply means that you don't stop. You get knocked down 7 times, you stand up 8 times. But in order for you to stand, or in order for you to actually step into the ring, to get on the dojo, to get on the floor of the battle of life, one of the things that is needed is absence in your mind, in your emotions, of something that could be a distraction, whether that be family, a loved one, a girlfriend, a wife. And to develop your career, you've heard me say before, you need to put in at least 10,000 hours, working hours. Often that takes at least 5 to 6 years of hard work. During those phases of your life, and I recall mine, there were times, and here's a good example so you can understand the challenges that most men have to go through and have to face. In my 20s, I worked very hard. I wasn't married and I was single. I'll give you a good scenario so you can understand the sacrifices that are needed. I worked for a company, and the company was going to be acquired. And I remember sitting down with the CEO, the director of the company, and we were trying to negotiate what would be an acceptable compensation for me. Now, I was being acquired as part of the takeover, so I was moving to the new company. But the negotiation that was taking place was not based on my salary. It was based on the fact that I had worked for this business, and over the past 6 years, I had not taken a holiday once. The work commitment was so heavy. Some days I worked 12, 13, 14, sometimes 16 hours every day. I was up at 5, I was in the office at 6, I was back at home sometimes at 9, 9:30. To deliver very, very, very influential and important projects, we agreed that I would be paid sometimes a double the rate, sometimes a negotiated sum, in order for me not to go on holiday, because by going on holiday, there was a risk to the project. Now this meant that for over 5 to 6 years, I carried over all of my annual leave every single year. Now, I traveled, yes, but I got into the habit of traveling sometimes on a Saturday evening and coming back on a Sunday evening, because most of the time I worked on a Friday and I worked on a Saturday. And just to get some sense of living, I would sometimes get on a plane and fly to a different country and sit there, have a great meal, look around, enjoy the sun, look at the surface, get on the plane in the evening and come back to London, because I knew I had to be at work at 6 in the morning, working in London. Now the point of this was that those seeds of labor accelerated my career path. A career that should have taken roughly maybe 20 years, I achieved that within 7 years. Why? Because my directors recognized, the CEOs recognized that I could be trusted, that I wasn't held back by a relationship. I didn't have children, I didn't have commitments, that they could depend on me. But yes, they worked me sometimes unnecessarily too long and too hard, but that was a personal choice. I made the choice. The point I'm making is I built my career and I built the foundations of the life I have today because I wasn't in a committed relationship and I was willing to work. Now, as part of that pursuit of my career, I came into my calling. I got to learn how good I was at a particular skill in doing something, but I came into what I believed was my assignment, my calling, my purpose. But that only came about because I was willing to work, and I was willing to allow myself to explore the option of pushing myself to my limits, pushing myself to the height of my comfort zone, and allowing myself to test my limits, to see what could break me. Now, don't get me wrong, there were things that I should have done differently. However, the net benefits was what I used as a foundation for what I later looked up to as a more meaningful life, as a more purposeful life. But I could only achieve that because I did not have an anchor holding me down, either in the form of family or in the form of a relationship. I didn't have any responsibility except to myself. Now this brings me to the third item, which has to do with wealth and financial freedom. At the end of our life, each and every one of us, something strange happens. By the time we retire, having worked for more than 40 or 50 years, Usually less than 5% of the population are financially independent and financially free or wealthy. Very few people have the opportunity to say that they could live from the products of their own resources that they have created without needing to work, but working because they want to rather than because they have to. By not being saddled into a relationship, you have the opportunity to become financially free. I achieved financial freedom at age 30. Most people work until 65 to be financially free. In many ways, part of that was because I worked very hard, long hours. I saved everything I was paid. I invested as much as I could. And I lived in a frugal way. I didn't have a partner, a wife. I didn't have kids. So I didn't have so many expenses. I simply looked after the golden goose, which was myself. I was laying all the golden eggs. And whatever I earned as a golden egg, I reinvested that. And the point of all of this is to say that the longer you delay marriage and a committed relationship, the higher the likelihood that you would create the probability of success, wealth, and financial freedom. So the third and perhaps the most important, in my opinion, especially for a man, because we are judged on our ability to produce. We're judged on our resources, power, influence, fame, money. We're judged on how much we have. Society looks to us based on what we've produced and what we are happy to live. In many ways, it goes back to the same concept of your calling, your gift is God's gift to you, and what you do with your gift, it's your gift back to God or to the community or back to the universe. And by holding out and not making the early mistake of saddling yourself down into a relationship, you have the opportunity to create wealth, to reinvest. Between age 18 and age 35 are 18 very important years. In that period, if you invest intelligently, if you invested just 10% of what you earned every month, you'll be stunned by what you have by age 35. Albert Einstein talked about compound interest as being the eighth wonder of the world. Like a snowball rolling down a hill at the early stage, it doesn't appear to be making a difference. But once you get to about 20 years and 25 years and 30 years, you can see the effect of compounding. So keep this in mind. The more you delay relationships, the more you minimize unnecessary spending, the more you minimize all of the expenses that they have and amount to absolutely nothing. The more you delay having a relationship or getting married, the more you're able to produce wealth, which you will need in the future should you decide that you want to be in a relationship. Now, number 4 is peace. Marriage has its benefits. Relationships have their benefits, but I must say, there is nothing more disastrous for a man's ability to produce and for a man's happiness like the absence of peace. By remaining single, by staying unmarried, the one thing you have is peace. Most young men do not understand the value of peace until it's too late, until they cannot undo their mistakes. A peaceful mind is something that most people wish they had. Because if you have a peaceful mind, you're able to think clearly, you're able to have thoughts that generate more thoughts, that generate ideas, that generate enterprises, that generate happiness and pleasure and fulfillment and opportunities. I haven't seen, from my experience, with the exception of a very few, I haven't come across that many relationships where the man has peace. There's always some chaos. And in many ways, I've actually found that the people who are married, the people in relationships, are often the most lonely, the most unhappy, the least peaceful. So just keep in mind this idea number 4 is that you have peace. Now, this peace connects to something which I call serenity, which has to do with your ability to just be in a flow state. There is a lot of research that has been done that talk about the idea of flow, which has to do with the mental state of mind where your brain, your mind, your intellect, your intellectual faculties are at the optimal state, working, and therefore creating things that could be considered to be magical. Seldom do you find people who generate great ideas through a state of chaos. Peace, serenity, I think is something that is not easily obtainable. Something we underestimate, especially for men. Now, number 5. Assuming you're able to find peace and you're able to find serenity. The 5th reason to stay unmarried is that you have freedom. You're free to do what you want to do. Free to travel, free not to travel, free to work hard, free not to work hard. The freedom to do whatever you want. The freedom to pursue whatever passion you have without being ridiculed. The freedom to explore opportunities and ideas and possibilities, and the freedom to try things, to fail. Now, over the last 20 years of my life, I have had high moments and low moments. And like the waves of the sea, you're always going to have things that come and go. I would say that my life has been like the waves of an ocean, where you have every now and then you have problems, and every now and then you have a crisis. Problems, crisis. I've been able to manage most of them successfully for a number of reasons. The first has been that I always had peace, so I could always think very clearly and straightforwardly. But the other had to do with that I was free. I was free to explore the crisis without running from the crisis. I tend to find that most people, when you get married, you build a hedge around your family and around yourself to prevent any form of crisis beyond your control from coming into your life. And the consequence of that is that you live a sheltered life. The same walls that protect the enemy from coming into your life is the same wall that protects good things from coming into your life. And so I found that in my experience, the freedom allowed me in many ways to explore my moments in the Garden of Gethsemane, moments when I felt very low, but I didn't have a lot of pressure to come out of that state. I had enough time to stay there and sulk and learn and absorb what life was trying to teach me. In many ways, I failed at most of the things that I had an interest in or I tried. But I was willing to fail because I did not have responsibilities. I didn't have a wife waiting for me to bring home the bacon. I didn't have a child looking to me with those beautiful eyes saying, "Daddy, will I have food for my lunch break tomorrow?" I did not have the burden of a family looking at me with the eyes of dependence. And so I had the opportunity to try things. I once said to a friend of mine that one of the reasons why most men go through a midlife crisis is because they're forced into maturing too early. They haven't tried and failed. They haven't explored things. They haven't come into their calling or purpose or their life's assignment or life's work. And so later on in life, there's a feeling of emptiness that comes in. where the person does not really know who they are. I would say I'm still developing as a person, but I've had the opportunity to explore the various facets of who I am. I would say that the universe loves every part of me, because there isn't just one part. There are parts that I consider myself to be schizophrenic. They're the good parts, and they're the ugly parts, and they're the bad parts, and they're the parts that I want to reveal. But I've seen the different faces that I have because I had the opportunity to allow myself to explore who I was, because I didn't have the burden of a relationship waiting for me. Now, let me bring this to today's close by giving you number 6, and I'll connect number 6 and number 7. Now, everything I've given you so far connects me to number 6, which is that by delaying marriage, by delaying relationships, by remaining single, by focusing on yourself, it minimizes regrets in your life. Things you wish you could have done but didn't do. When they've stopped and investigated and interviewed people on their dying beds, most of them all have regrets. In most cases, the most prevalent regret has to do with not doing something that they really had a passion for, something that they wish they had done, something that they wanted to explore, a life they wish they had lived, wondering what if. In many ways, tiptoeing their way to death because they were forced into a relationship or a situation where they couldn't afford to fail. And this connects me to number 7, which has to do with the fact that for those of you who want to be in a relationship and want to be married, by doing everything that I've suggested, number 7 means that you increase the probability that when you find someone to settle down with, that it will be the right person.